Welcome to CRT. I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen, and I'm speaking with Heather Wilson. She's the co-CEO of GiveSendGo, the world's largest Christian crowdfunding platform, which was launched in 2015 and founded by Heather and her siblings. The idea behind GiveSendGo is to go beyond funding people's material needs, but also providing hope for people's spiritual needs. I love that. Not sure if that's your mission statement, Heather, but I love what you're doing. So thank you for joining me.
No, thank you for having me. And our mission statement is not too different, but we keep it a little simpler. It's to share the hope of Jesus through crowdfunding. And that's like our internal mission. Obviously, anybody can use us. You don't have to be a Christian to come and use Gives and Go. We just want to be the better platform for fundraising. And that is what our goal is. And when you come to our platform, it's not going to be just about fundraising. That's a big part of it. It's about sharing hope while people are going through some difficult times.
Yeah, and I think that based on the decisions you've made and the campaigns you allowed to go forth on your site, you truly are standing by your mission, which is to allow people to, those that are controversial, well, you're not going to make a stand on that. That's up to Jesus, right? That's up to Jesus and his heart. You're not, I love the fact that you have been sort of standing back and allowing things to play out. I want to start off with what's happened a long time ago, back in 2022. But when I told my husband I was interviewing you, he said, you need to ask her about the Canadian truckers because that's how I learned of Give, Send, Go. And I have to admit that that's sort of around that time too. I think that's sort of when the name became, obviously you built a reputation around that. The Freedom Convoy, that's what these Canadian truckers were called, and they were striking against the Canadian government because of the vaccine mandates. And GoFundMe had also a campaign for them, but they shut theirs down. They said that the truckers had violated their policies. But for you and your company, the government, the Canadian government, actually went after you because you wouldn't shut yours down. I would love to know just if you can relive that time back in COVID. Talk about, just what you were up against.
Yeah, so a couple years prior to COVID, we had found ourselves in a couple other political type battles. And as a platform that we said we want to share Jesus with, we were like, man, is this the battles we want to be in this political space? But we landed really on that we needed to be principled, that we needed to have a standard, and we would allow everybody to, let's say, raise money for legal defense. We saw people wanting to raise money for legal defense, and we said, no, you're allowed to do that. In the United States, you're allowed to raise money if people want to give you money. And so we had gotten into a little hot water with our stance around that. But then all of a sudden, this trucker convoy happened. There was a campaign on Give Send Go called Adopt a Trucker, and it had been raised a couple $100,000. But the one that got picked up in the news was on the other platform, and it kind of blew up because the news covered it. Everybody found out about it, and it started raising money. I think it raised $8 to $10 million. And 2 months prior, let me just back up a little bit. 2 months prior to the trucker convoy, any of us, we're all locked in our homes. This COVID thing, we don't know what's happening. We're being told all this stuff. And we had been being attacked for allowing people campaigns for different COVID related things. And one of my sisters, a bookkeeper, she was saying, "Hey, I just got this like thing for cybersecurity policy. You should buy this because you've been attacked. You're an online company." And so we said, yeah, you know what? We've been talking about this for years. Let's get this cybersecurity policy. Well, 2 months later, the truckers come to Give Send Go, and because they get shut down on the other platform, and immediately half the world was trying to donate and half the world was trying to take us down. And this
No.
group called Anonymous, the white-faced hacker group, and one of their leaders, Aubrey Cottle, hacked GiveSendGo. And so we got hacked.
Did the
And,
cybersecurity software help? No, it didn't help.
it didn't help. This is a group that is known for hacking into governments, right? So this is like, and we were a newer platform and we had security, but not what they had just gotten in. And so
Wow.
What had happened is that we went to the site one day, it was Super Bowl Sunday, and all of a sudden the site redirected to a new page, and it started scrolling names of givers across the home screen, and saying, "We've frozen your site." And it was playing the Frozen, Disney Frozen music. And so we were like, what the heck? So we take the site down so we can figure out how they got in, how they were able to redirect the site. There's a kid, like I said, Aubrey Cottle, who's bragging online, going, I hacked GiveSendGo. And he was bragging about it. And the timing was really interesting because at the same time, the Canadian government had been saying, you need to shut this down, this campaign. And we're like, we're not going to shut it down. Like, this is a perfectly legal campaign. And they said, well, we're going to find the donors and we're going to go after them. And then all of a sudden, this guy hacks and releases the names of the donors. No uh, information about credit cards or anything like that, but the donor names, which was enough during that time where people were like, oh my gosh, this is scary. The government said they're going to come after us. And sure enough, we started to see bank accounts being frozen. We heard that Canada invoked this emergency act. And they kind of went a little crazy. And we were like, we're not going to shut the campaign down. And so what happens is we finally get the site back up. The campaign has raised 10, 12 million dollars like in a week and a half on GiveSendGo. It has just exploded. And we get the site back up. We're doing business. We're hiring people. We're trying to continue to make our site more secure. And a few months later, we get a knock on the door and we get served papers for a $300 million lawsuit from the citizens of Ottawa for the honking of the trucks. Now, whatever happened with the money is we actually refunded the money to the donors, the givers, because the Canadian government. So let me back up a little bit. The Canadian government said, you need to shut this down. And we said we wouldn't. And so we sent some money to the campaign owners, the person who has a bank account attached in Canada, to that organization. We sent a few million dollars over, the first couple, few million dollars, and immediately it got frozen when it went across the screen, the
Yes.
border. It got frozen. And so we said, okay, we're not going to send any more money to Canada right now until we figure this out because we don't want this money to be frozen by the government.
Wait,
And so, yeah,
before, gosh, I don't know if I should let you go, but I'm
yeah.
so curious about what legal standing did the government have to freeze that money? And I mean, where does it stand like now? Do you
It's wrapped up in, there's this $300 million lawsuit. There's all these money grabs going on where they see this money sitting in over in Canada and they go, we need to, lawyers are trying to get this money, like on both sides. And so it's actually crazy that this money's sitting there. We ended up refunding all our givers because we tried to find any legal way to get the money to the truckers because that's where the intended recipients of the money. And the Canadian government said, since we can't shut Give Send Go down, what we're going to do is we're going to make anybody who receives money from GiveSendGo a criminal. We're going to criminalize the funds. So now they kind of got our hands tied because if we gave anybody money, they could be prosecuted as a criminal. And so we said, well, we're not going to put truckers at risk. Our donors, we don't want their money frozen. So we said we're going to just refund the money to the givers so that the givers don't have to worry about their funds. And so now we're being named in a $300 million lawsuit, and we have to decide whether we're going to fight it or we're going to just let it ride. And our prayer was, all right, God, tell us what do you want from this? And we kept feeling like the battle belongs to the Lord. As Christians, me and my brother would pray about it and we're like, the battle belongs to the Lord. This is God's fight, right? And it's easy to say that and then just kind of want to ignore it because the battle belongs to the Lord, right? And it's getting closer to the day where we either had to have a defense about and submit a defense, or we would default. And if we defaulted, we would just have to let it go. And then if they would have to play out in Canada, and then they'd have to come to the United States and try to prosecute us there. And and so we were like leaning toward just defaulting, letting it ride out. And the week before, we said, let's actually spend a little bit of time, like really fasting, praying, and asking God about this. And Jacob, my brother, came back and he was like, "Listen, I that song came on the radio while I was praying, and I opened up the Bible to find out where the battle belongs to the Lord. Like what stories was that in the Bible?" And he's like, "It's David and Goliath is one of those stories." And he said, "And you know what? I felt like David, he said the battle belonged to the Lord, but he didn't just stand there. He actually picked up a stone and started swinging it. And he didn't just fight for himself, he fought for all of Israel. Like there's a bigger play here. He's like, I think we're supposed to fight this. And there's 5 truckers that need legal defense as well. What if we covered their legal defense? Well, we're like a startup. We don't have a ton of money. We're just getting known. Our platform's blowing up. And we call the lawyer,
Literally blowing him.
literally blowing up on every side. We called the lawyer that had been pursuing us who wanted to represent us. And we said, okay, we're going to go ahead with defending ourselves. So we need to put a letter of defense together, and we will cover these 5 other truckers that need a defense as well. How much is this going to cost us? And, he went back and forth a little bit, but he kind of settled on, it'll probably be close to like $250,000 over the next year or two, which for us is like a sucker punch. Like I know in legal battles, that's not a ton, but for us, this
Yeah.
was like a
Yeah.
lot of money. $250,000. Like, where are we
Yeah.
going to get that money from? How's this going to work? But again, we said, okay, no, we feel strongly that the battle belongs to the Lord. So if God is going to have us fight this, then he's going to provide because that's who he is. And we get off the phone, and less than 2 hours later, we get a phone call. And it's the cybersecurity policy people who we had been trying to contact for months now to settle out from the cyber breach we had. And they call us on the same day, 2 hours later, and they say, we have a check for you for $260,000. Where would you like us to send it?
What?
The battle belongs to the Lord.
Wow. Wow. Wait a second. What was that for, though? Oh, because
Because
they.
the hack, so we had gotten the cybersecurity policy. We got hacked. We had to take the site down. We lost business. We had to hire these security people. And so once they totaled up the amount that they owed us for this hack, because we had the insurance policy, and we had been trying to get in touch with them for like months, like, hey, what else do you need from us? We've submitted all our claims. Here's all the damage we've had. And the day that we get told that we step forward in faith and say, okay, God, this is your battle, they call us and they say we have a check for $10,000 more than what we had just been quoted. And that again is one of those things where God steps into the story. He's like, listen, don't worry about it. Like the battle does belong to me. Just keep following me, pressing in.
Where is the lawsuit? How did it end?
It's not ended. So we are still in the middle of it. So it just lasts. This is called, they call it lawfare because it is just like, let's see how much money that we can drag this on for. But there's been some interesting developments recently, just in the case, just with the Canadian government, kind of saying we did overstep our bounds with the Emergency Act and some things just personally with different people in our circle. And so some things have moved and shifted, and we're just waiting, fighting where we need to fight, and
You
resting where we
haven't
need to
had
rest.
to like write additional checks or anything like that. So far, it's been covered so far, which
Yeah,
is.
we've just used that money and slowly paid our lawyer when he sends us his bill every month for his work.
Well, I like the story of David and Goliath, but on your website, you have this quote, Unbeknownst to us, we stepped into a battlefield after much prayer, discussion, and counsel. GiveSendGo was created for such a time as this. And it just made me think of Esther. I have a women's Bible study,
Yep.
so you follow Esther, cover Esther quite a bit. And that saying is so, you know,
Yep.
memorable, such as time as this. And it made me also think about not just Esther, but Deborah, how she prayed before she went to war. So she prayed for 3 days and then she made that decision. So it's, or and she prayed for a couple days
Yeah.
or some time
Yeah.
before she made a decision. And it was really nice that you sat down with your brother or your all of your family or your siblings
Yeah.
prayed before you made that decision, because you have to do that. You have to give it to the Lord, and then he enlightens you like he did with your brother.
I
So
think that's what we miss so often, even as Christians in the business world, is that we're running a business and we're supposed to be smart enough and brave enough and know how to run our businesses. And we can get so into just doing it that we forget that we don't have to know everything, that we have a God that says he will give us wisdom. I've been reading through the Bible. This January, I said, I'm going to read through the Bible in a month. So like all I've been doing is reading. But it's been really fascinating to read through so quickly, just as a story, like not studying. I'll highlight things that I'm going to go back to, just that stuck out to me. But one of the things I noticed in reading so quickly and so big, 40 chapters a day or something, um, is that there were so many times for David, again, back to David, but when he was going to battle, it would say like over and over again. And I was like, man, I never saw this, but because I'm reading so much at a time, it's picking up this pattern. It said David would ask God, should I attack this country? Should I come in from the right or the left or the north or the south? And he would like before he ever made a strategic plan to go into battle, he actually asked God. And God would say, nope. Leave them alone, or you don't have to fight this one, or yes, go in and fight. Like this is, and I will be on your side. And he actually did that over and over again. And it really challenged me to say, we've done it in the past, but this is continually how we need to run our businesses as Christian business owners. We have a leg up on our competition. We
yeah,
do.
you have God on your side. You have
We
to,
do.
yeah. Yeah, for
So,
sure. As long as you're really sincere. And there's so many times where I say, yeah, I'm gonna pray about this, and then I forget to pray about this. And I
yeah,
know I made the decision, but maybe I did pray about it. Sometimes it's so hard to know whether you really prayed about it because I pray it all the time. And over
exactly. 'Cause you're having that dialogue with God in your head without stopping and folding your hands, right? Yeah.
exactly, exactly. By the way, I'm also going through the Bible, but we I do Bible yoga with my husband.
Oh,
Uh,
that's cool.
So we're still on Isaiah, and we've
Okay.
been doing this since January of 1 of 2025. So we do Bible yoga. So it's been kind of, we try to do like two or three,
Yeah. A little
um,
bit.
yeah, little bits, chapters in a book. Sometimes it's really hard to get through. In Isaiah, I don't know how many chapters are. It looks pretty long.
Yeah, it is. It's
So
pretty 50 something or something. It felt like a long book to get through. Um,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. You got through it in a
Yeah,
day.
because you're just reading. Again, I'm not trying to like read it for like inspiration. I'm just reading it like, okay, how does
It,
this story happen? And now here's God's judgment on the people, and he's doing it through these prophets. And I would like highlight things and go, oh, I'm going to go back to that, but I'm not stopping now because I have to get 15 more chapters.
I mean, I guess, it's interesting because I've like last summer I read Romans, and
Yeah.
while I didn't read, I listened to
Yep.
Romans a lot, like the entire summer. Now I'm on Corinthians, and all I'm doing is going through Corinthians, which I love because it really does talk about sort of the wisdom of God, the folly of foolishness of the world, and I think that's so appropriate for now. And all I'm doing is listening to that over and over and over and over again. But I think that there's value in in reading the Bible in so many different ways because
Absolutely.
you can
Meditating on each verse,
meditate.
studying what was going on in history at that time. There's so many different ways. Reading the Bible in a year, reading a Bible chronologically, reading
Yeah,
the Bible in just sections of reading the Psalms or the Proverbs every day, right? Because there's 31 Proverbs. There's so many different ways, and there's not a right way. I was challenged by my son to do this month reading. He actually was like, that's too much. And I was like, okay, challenge accepted. I'm going to do it. I love to read. So, like, I can find myself at nighttime. I don't watch necessarily TV. My husband will be watching something. I'll pull out a book, like a novel, and I'll read for a couple hours. And I'm like, if I have time to scroll on social media and read for a couple hours, my fun book, I I bet I could do this if I really became disciplined. And I'm what do we have how many more days? Today's the 28th. I'm like mid New Testament, which is much easier to read than the Old Testament. I can tell you that. I'm enjoying it.
yeah.
But yeah.
Yeah, some of the stuff in the Old Testament can be a little bit tiring, for sure. Chronicles.
Oh,
How many times they list the different names and but anyway, so we digress. We're going this way.
I know.
I want to
Sorry.
get back to the campaign. No, this is all good though, because I did ask you about making the decisions for your business, but I do want to talk about some of the high profile campaigns you have on there. I just saw that you had one for Jonathan Ross, which is not that you're putting these up
Yeah.
there. You're allowing these campaigns. Jonathan Ross is the ICE agent who was hit by a car, and then he fatally shot a woman in Minnesota. You had a campaign for Daniel Penny, who was the Marine who choked a man on a New York subway. Um, and then in 2020, that was in 2023, you've had one for Kyle Rittenhouse. I mean, you've definitely had some high profile ones out there. And Kyle Rittenhouse was the one who fatally shot the two people during the BLM riots. Has the outrage against your company, has it toned down given the fact that it's okay, you're on to I don't know how many already? I mean, since Kyle Rittenhouse, like I mean, how are they being received right now? How are you being um how's your reputation?
We're growing, so people are still finding out about us and loving our stance, both on freedom and on sharing hope with people. Uh, there are always, at any moment, notice we could be thrown into the news cycle because of allowing someone. And again, you said it. We don't set up these campaigns. Someone sets it up. We say, is it legal? Like, are they allowed to do this under the law of the land? And then we allow them to fundraise. Freedom of expression to be able to give. The giver should be allowed to give their money to who they want. Um, we're always fighting against the idea that we're not just a one-sided platform. We're really for everybody. And we've had a couple campaigns recently that were also for the left side of the aisle, because you would think that we are only for the right side of the aisle because of the campaigns. But the only reason those campaigns come to GiveSendGo is because GoFundMe shuts them down, and they only shut down one side campaigns. And so they would come to us. And we kept saying, we're not just for one side. Everybody can use us. And most people, when they use GiveSendGo, they're raising money because their friend has cancer. They're raising money because they're going on a mission trip. They're adopting. They had a house fire. Like great things. And then you get these news stories that like make this big deal. Lots of fake news lies going around. And so it's really hard to stand principled, but I'll give you an example. The CEO killer, Luigi Mangione.
Right,
So
right.
as far as we saw again on social media and the little bits that came out, he killed the CEO of the healthcare. And
Yeah.
people were like, we want to set up a campaign for him for his legal defense. And I'm like, oh, what?
Yeah.
Like, does he deserve that? But if we're going to be principled, we had said that everybody deserves it. The amount of right-sided friends that we had that loved Give Send Go when we allowed Kyle Rittenhouse and Daniel Penny, all of a sudden we're like, you shouldn't be allowing this. And we're
Mm,
like, well, it's for legal defense. Like he's allowed that. And we're not against consequences. Like if he's found guilty, once all the facts come out, let him go to jail. Let the consequences fall. But we're going to allow the same thing for everybody. And so there's a couple situations like that made let's say the other side, if you will, that hated Give Send Go have
mhm.
to use us. And I remember writing a post on X that said, you're going to hate us until you need us. And it's
Mhm.
sure enough, that is what happens. They hate us until we need us, but and it's not easy. As
Yeah.
somebody who wants people to like me and I want to do the right thing and I want to glorify God, it's not easy to have the world telling you how horrible you are and that you're a white supremacist and you're a terrorist and all these things about you that you know aren't true. Um, so, but you
It has
stand.
Has it changed hearts? Has it changed hearts? The fact that you truly understand human nature. You talked a lot about David. I mean, David wasn't exactly pure.
No.
And so do you think you've changed hearts at all because you have been so principled?
I think so. I think we've challenged people, whether they allow their heart to be changed or not. We've definitely challenged people, right? To think differently. Like when I'll go to a conference and speak, and someone comes up and goes, "Oh, I hate that you allowed that campaign." I'm able to have a dialogue to say, "Yeah, but this is our heart behind it, and this is why." They might not even agree with me, but they're able to like stop and listen and go, "Okay, that is principled." And one of the things we have changed or that we've seen change is even our competitors, what they allow. There's been campaigns on our competitor that they never would have allowed 3 years ago. But because they know if they cancel it, it will
Yeah,
come to GiveSendGo. So they're good, pretty much handing us money in our pocket.
yeah,
They have to wrestle with how they're going to do business. And we love that. We love that we're making the online platforms, they call them big tech platforms, and I call them bad tech because the minute technology goes to be used against people like that they disagree with, it's bad tech. That's not what technology is for. Big tech
yeah,
should be tech that stands on principle for everybody, even people you disagree with. And so we've seen some changes, yes, in people's hearts being able to wrestle out some of these hard things because these are wrestles even for us. These aren't always easy decisions.
yeah.
But we've had to stand firm in it and understand that our even our personal identities doesn't come from what people say about us online. It comes before doing the right thing, standing before God, saying, "God, is this what you want us to do?"
Right. It matters what God thinks, and
Yep.
He knows your heart. I'll ask you something controversial. I didn't see this
Sure.
on your website, but it certainly could be something that could be controversial.
Sure.
And that would be somebody who wants to get an abortion or somebody who wants to get a transgender, surgery.
Sure. Good questions, and you nailed it. You nailed the two that we actually have uh, thoughts around as far as being a Christian platform and what we'll allow. And so we say we allow freedom for people, and we do, but we don't allow murder on GiveSendGo. You can't go, "I'm going to buy a gun because my neighbor's annoying and I'm going to go shoot him." Yes, you can't raise funds to do that. And you can't raise funds to kill your baby. And so science proves that there is life in a womb, and we're not going to kill life. And so you're not allowed to do that. If you want to do that, go to GoFundMe. They'll welcome you with open arms, because they celebrate that, as a
They
woman's
have
freedom.
do they
Oh,
have campaigns that for that?
oh,
For
absolutely. Over on the other platform, we say no. We're not going to allow murder. And then as far as the transgender thing, which has come up recently in the news, where now it's like, okay, it's very talked about, not recently, but over the last few years, it's really risen in what
yeah.
people are experiencing, seeing in culture. We decided, well, we don't allow child abuse, and transitioning a child is child abuse. They should not have to take any sort of drugs or hormones because some 5-year-old says, "I feel like a girl or boy today." No, they might feel like a fisherman and a snake the next day. Like you don't transition. You do not, that is child abuse. And we're not going to allow that on our site. Now, let's say you're 25 years old and you're struggling with your identity. Well, you're a grown up. You have the ability to make that choice for you. We would
Right.
much rather them come to GiveSendGo. Now, that's celebrated again on our competitors' platform. We say we will allow somebody who's an adult to use GiveSendGo. We haven't seen it, but we would allow someone to use GiveSendGo because we actually have. So when I say our mission is to share the hope of Jesus through crowdfunding, we actually we actually took that really seriously and said, "How are we going to do this?" And we said,
Mhm.
"Okay, what if we were to add Bible verses to our emails? What if we were to add a prayer button? What if we have a prayer wall? What are these things that we can add to share hope?" And then we thought, what if we actually had a hope team? And so we
Yeah.
started hiring people. So we have like our customer service and we have our marketing team and our development team and all of that. But we actually have a hope team whose job, these people's job is to call and pray for every campaign. And that's all they do all day is call campaigns and say, "Hey, I just read your campaign. I see your daughter has cancer. Can I just pray for you right now? I see you're going on a missions trip. Can I pray for you right now?" And so if somebody, let's say a 25-year-old, is confused about their gender and they come to GiveSendGo for whatever reason to fundraise for that, guess what they're going to get? they're going to get a call from our Hope team that says, listen, God loves you. He created you. You don't need to do this. Like, let me pray with you right now.
Have you had that opportunity to do that?
Not with a transgender person necessarily, but we did have, this is a really, like really early on when we started the Hope team. Um, they just call through, right? So there's a list of people who start campaigns, and then the Hope team just calls the oldest and is always trying to catch up to the newest because hundreds are made every day. And so it's all, if you will, random. We know nothing's random with God, but it seems random because you're just calling the next one in line. And one of
Yeah.
our Hope team members called this lady. Her campaign was about her um, daughter had had a baby and suffered from postpartum depression
Mm.
and ended up killing herself
Oh.
because she was so depressed and life was bad and she had a bad boyfriend and all the, all the things. And so the campaign was for this mom to raise money for her daughter's funeral and to raise this baby, the grandchild. Super sad. There's a lot of hard things on GiveSendGo, people raising money for hard things. And so what happens is that she we call and she answers and we say, hey, we're from GiveSendGo from the Hope team. We're so sorry about the loss of your daughter. And we just are calling to pray with you. Is there anything specific that we can be praying for you right now? And the lady just starts bawling. And she
Mm.
says, you don't even understand. I just pulled out my gun and I was going to end my life tonight.
Oh my. Whoa.
And God had us reach in his sovereignty and his love for people. He said, I want you to provide hope to this woman. Like there, she needs somebody. And he had us call at the exact right minute that she was sitting there contemplating, is it worth living with all this trauma that she went on? And at that moment, we're like, okay, this is way more than fundraising. Like, yeah, we let people raise money easily and get
Yeah.
their funds, like all great things. But that's not why we do what we do.
No, no. And in a backdoor way, you're sort of helping people with mental health.
A lot of times people are because when they're going through that, that's where your mental health is drained. When you're going through like your husband was in a car accident and will never walk again, right? Or your whatever. These are heavy things that are happening in the world, and most of the time, someone just needs to know someone cares about them.
And a lot of times too, though, it can happen, the verses in Mark talks about how there was a little boy who was demon possessed, and his father brings the boy to Jesus, and the disciples can't do anything, but Jesus cures the boy, and the disciples say, "Why, how come we didn't do this?" He said, "Some things just need prayer." And I remember reading that when my husband's dad was in hospice and he was in hospice. He's there. Everybody's there because they're going to say goodbye to him. And I'm sitting there and I'm thinking, I'm going to pray for him. And he didn't want me to pray for him. And so I thought, oh no. And so then I read that. I read Mark and I thought, darn it, I'm going to pray for you because you don't even have to know. Like the little boy didn't know that he was being prayed over and he was cured. And so I prayed for him and he got out of hospice. My husband says he's the first person to write, a Yelp, review for a hospice because here his dad's on his deathbed and he's able to leave. And I do believe it was prayer. My husband's brother thinks it was the vodka and the chips. I think it's the prayer. But prayer is so powerful. You don't even have to. You could just pray for them. And I think that's so encouraging that you have that prayer team because I think that's doing quite more than you even know. Like,
Absolutely. And I think it's the challenge that we talk about all the time is that if you are a Christian, a business owner, if you are someone, like we're a fundraising platform. And yet we were able to say, how can we share the hope that we have inside of us with our customers, with our people? And I believe that every business that is owned by Christians should be asking God the same thing. God, I'm a plumber. How do I share hope with people that I go in their house and fix their toilet? God, I'm a teacher. How do I share hope with the classroom? God, I'm a tech startup. how do I engage with culture to not just be a good platform or principled or whatever, but to actually say, we believe that there is a hope found in Jesus. It should be the best news. It's called good news, but
Hmm.
often we don't treat it like good news.
Hmm. No, we don't. Well, because the world doesn't say it's good news. So the world is constantly trying to fight you, spread that good news,
Absolutely.
throwing whatever they can at you. Um, I want to ask about, talk a little bit more about how you integrate your faith amongst your employees. Is there something that you do to keep them grounded or?
Sure. Not every one of our employees is a Christian. Um, oh, a good portion of them are. They all need to understand that our mission is to share the hope of Jesus through crowdfunding. They also need to understand the battles that we find ourselves in. And some of the coolest things is when we have a couple overseas employees on our development team, but we've had some US based employees that have come and they've been like, yeah, I'm not opposed to Christianity. Like, I love what you did with the truckers, or, something like align there. But and I'm not opposed to Christianity. It's great. Or I grew up in a Christian family. I don't really talk about it or do anything now. And watching God change their hearts over time, and not because we're pounding anything down their throats, but just because we talk about the hope we find when we open up our meetings. We'll open in prayer. We have fun challenges. We're all remote, so there's not an office building. We have to do this all through Slack and other tools that were, Zoom meetings, things like that. And so we're constantly trying to find ways to say, how do we share hope with our employees? We have an employee care team. When somebody's hurt or sick or something happens, we step in and we send them a gift package. We just did it today. Our Hope Team leader woke up and had some heart pain and things, and so I ended up having to go to the hospital. And so what we did is we sent a gift package to his wife, who just found out she was pregnant, and to their kids, because he was going to be in the hospital for a few days. And so we're always looking for ways to not just externally share hope with everybody else, but to share
Yeah.
their hope with people inside. And in a cool story, so I mentioned this guy twice. His name's Aubrey Cottle. He was the hacker, right? That hacked GiveSendGo. Well, this past spring, we saw that so almost a year ago, we saw that he had finally gotten caught for hacking into the GOP Republican database down in Texas for the heartbeat bill. And so he had gotten caught, and he was in jail, and he was awaiting bail. And we were like, whoa, look at that. Like, this guy who took us down is in jail or is waiting on getting out on bail. Like, we're like, wow, maybe we'll be able to press charges now, because no one would touch it back in during the trucker convoy. And so we were wrestling that, like, wow, I wonder what's going to happen with this guy. And we went on social media, because we can be our social media team can be snarky and a little funny. And they went on social media on X, and they tagged him in a post, and they said, hey, Aubrey, did you know you can raise money for your legal fees on GiveSendGo?
Yeah.
And which everybody thought was hilarious, because we allow people to raise money for legal fees, even those we don't like, right? And so he actually responded underneath our post and said, well played, GiveSendGo. And
Mm.
then what we heard is that he had made a TikTok video for all his fans and his followers, right? So we went over. I went to go watch it just because I was like, what is he going to say? This guy's like crazy. His followers are crazy. Like,
How old is he?
what?
How old is he?
He's probably late 30s, 40 now, and it's hard to tell, maybe mid 30s. I don't, but he makes this TikTok video, and I'm watching it. I find it, and he's like talking to all his fans, and he's like, "Hey guys, like, I'm out on bail. I don't know what's going to happen. Like, keep it going, all that sort of stuff." And he's like, "But no matter what happens to me, please take care of my mom. Like, she had nothing to do with this, and she took all my pets in." and she's living pension to paycheck to paycheck for her pension. She doesn't have much money, and taking care of all my pets is really expensive. So if I like go to jail, she's going to need help. And so he's like telling his followers, right, his crew, that this is what he wants. And I watched that, and I felt the Lord nudge me, and I went back to our team and I said, you know what? We started a department of our Hope team called Outrageous Generosity. And I said, what would be more outrageous than for us to bless the mom of our hacker? And so I contacted Aubrey on X and said, "Hey, we want to send your mom some pet supplies. Can you give me her email?" She did. He did. And so then we got her email, emailed her. She sent us her phone number. Our Hope team was able to call her and pray with her. I don't know that she knows that her son hacked us like he did, but we were able to pray with her. And we said, "Listen, we want to set you up. Send us over what pets you have," which she did with all pictures. She's very much a pet person. So there's
Yeah.
pictures of all her cats and dogs and everything. And then they each have different types of food and litter and all the things that go along with being a pet owner with lots of pets. And we said, okay, you know what? We're going to purchase this for you every month, and we're going to set up a subscription that just gets delivered to you every month. A few $400, $500 every month that get
Nice.
delivered to you. Be- and and we're going to pray for you, and we're going to pray for your son, because the world tells us he deserves consequences, and we believe that he does deserve, people do deserve consequences. There are consequences, but the Bible actually tells us as Christians that we also should have a different response. Not that we don't have consequences, but
Mhm.
that we're supposed to pray for those who persecute us and bless those who are our enemies. And so we said, we're going to bless our enemy. And we're going to believe that God is going to take this situation, and one day that Aubrey's going to come into a real relationship with Jesus, and it's going to be worth the hack, and it's going to be worth that stress. And I think about it now because I think we've all been there. We go through something horrific and it feels like that was the worst season of my life. That's what the hack felt like. It was so stressful. Our site was taken down. The government was all over us. Like, it was so stressful. And
Right.
God, I think, was going, listen, I got you an insurance policy right before it. You're going to live through this hack and you'll turn out all right. But what I'm
Right.
going to use this hack for, which you think is horrible, like the worst thing, it's not horrible, because you know what's going to happen? You're going to be fine. And then I'm going to pay for your legal fees, because I see down the line, you're going to get a call and you're going to have legal fees. And so I'm going to use this hack that you think is the worst thing happening, and I'm going to use it for your good, because I see what's coming down the line and you need money for your legal fees. So I'm going to use that bad thing. And not only that, there's this kid that I want to teach and show my love to. And so I'm going to use you during this horrible moment that you would have said, I don't want to go through that again. And God saying, no, I have somebody I want you to love on in my name. And I'm going to use this period of time that you thought was the worst thing. And it's going to actually provide for your legal fees, and it's going to reach this kid that I've been pursuing. And he's not a Christian yet. The cool part of the story to me is that it's the middle of the story. So often we want it all wrapped up and packaged to know that God's faithful. But sometimes it's cool just to sit in the middle and say, God, what are you going to do? What are you going to do here? And I can't wait to the day when Aubrey comes to know Jesus as his savior, whether he comes to work for GiveSendGo as our security guy, whether he just finds Jesus and his life is changed for all his quote unquote followers. And so that's our prayer, is for this kid to come to know Jesus.
I love I love that story. What a great story. I mean, you're living that out in terms of Romans 8:28, right?
Yep.
It's like God works through all things for those who love him. And what is really nice too is that in terms of in the midst of that situation when you were being hacked, or even afterwards when find out that, he's in the situation he's in, it's really easy for you to just feel happy. Was it Schadenfreude? I forget what
Yeah.
that is. But it's what I really like is that your identity is so much in God and not in Give, Send, Go, because it seems so easy for you to make those right decisions. And people in this world get so wrapped up in these different identities, and their identity, when you keep going back to your identity and being in God, it's so simple. It's so simple to make those decisions. And that's what I love about hearing what you've just said, is that it is about, your purpose is about no other thing. It's, are you living out the Bible? Are you sharing Christ with him and his mom?
Yeah. And that is, and it can look simple, and often you look and go, well, she's this, and so obviously this, or like I couldn't do that, or like we give ourselves excuses often for, well, that's why you could do it. And I can tell you that I had many identity crises while building Give Send Go with my brother.
Yeah.
Like the many times where I wanted to feel important. And as a woman, I would go to conferences with my brother, and there would be men who would walk up to us and act like they'd talk to him, and I'd be like, hello, hello, like, right, like you've probably experienced it, and you just like you feel like you have to fight more to get the recognition. And it became a thing for me where I was like fighting for recognition. Like I'm like, I need people to know that I am just as important as him. Like that and it was like a really big struggle for me. And I remember talking to my dad about it and being like, Dad, this is just, you saw, my dad was there with me at one event. We stood up and a guy came over and started talking to us, me and Jacob, and my dad was watching because I kept saying this happens all the time. And my dad's like, I finally saw it because this guy comes over and starts talking to us, focus on Jacob, asks a question that I know. I answered the question, right? And he still didn't ever turn to me to talk to me. He kept just talking to Jacob, even though I was the one answering the questions. And my dad's like, that was really weird. Like, I actually saw what you said because it can feel like, am I making this up? Am I, like, is this in my head? And so it's a struggle as a businesswoman, especially with a partner who's a guy, to
Mhm.
sometimes have this power imbalance. And I was like, God, I don't want this to define my life. Like, I don't want this always to be like a struggle. And my dad was like, you know what, Heather, what if God asks you to give up, give, send, go? Like, think of Abraham putting Isaac on the altar. What if he
Mhm.
asked you to give up, give, send, go? Would you do it? Like, I think you need to like wrestle that out. And I was like, okay, let me think about that. And I actually was like, no, you know what? After spending some time with the Lord, I'm like, I could give up, give, send, go. Like if I knew that like God's like, nope, I want you to move on to do this next thing or whatever, that I could do it. But where I was not wanting to give up, what God was asking me to put on the altar that I didn't want to do, it wasn't give, send, go. It was myself. The recognition of God was saying, I want you to sacrifice yourself that if no one ever knows that you help start, found Give Send Go, that you are a CEO of Give Send Go. Like if no one ever knows that, you're still enough. And you need to put yourself on the altar and say, listen, this is not about me making sure people know I'm important. And I was
Mm.
sitting in a hotel room at a conference that something had just stirred up in me. And I was actually in the bathroom, going to the bathroom. And I'm like, God, I hate this feeling inside that I'm like annoyed about this stuff. And that song came to mind, like it, like super strongly, that says, I've never been more loved than I am right now. I've never been more loved than I am right now. And I'm sitting on the toilet, like going to the bathroom. And the Lord was saying, you've never been more loved. It's not when you're up on the stage. Like you'll have that opportunity, but you're sitting on the toilet and you've
Yeah.
never been more
Oh.
loved. Exactly. You have never been more loved than you are right now in your hotel room by yourself, sitting
Mhm.
on a toilet. Like that's how I love you. Like I don't love you because of what you do for me. I love you because you're just my child. And it was like a shift in me. And it's still, I wouldn't say that it never raises up. I'm quicker to grab it and say, nope, that's not truth. I'm gonna let that go. I'm not gonna let myself dwell on it. But the identity thing, another story is when the Kyle campaign for Kyle Rittenhouse first happened, we got death threats and hate mail. It was the first time we kind of exploded. I woke up and there was thousands of hate mail, and I'm like, what's going on? And Christians were telling us we were horrible people, and non-Christians were telling us we were horrible people for allowing this campaign, and everybody was attacking me. And I want people to like me. I want to be known for being Give Send Go, like the Christian platform. And now people are saying she's a white supremacist terrorist. And it's like hard. And I remember sitting at my desk one day, struggling with it. And my daughter comes in and she comes in and she's, she's 11 or she was probably 8 at the time. And she goes, Mom, my brother just called me stupid. Right? She's a kid. Her brother and her were outside playing. And I
Yeah.
look over like quickly and I'm like, well, are you stupid? And she's like, no. And I go, okay, so who cares if he called you stupid? What, what if he called you a banana? And she
Mhm.
laughed because she's 8. And I go, would you go, I'm not yellow. I don't have a peel. I'm not a fruit. Like, would you try to justify that you're not a banana? And she's like, no. And I said, exactly. So if someone calls you something and it's not true, pretend they're calling you a banana and laugh it off because it makes them look more silly than you. And I felt the Lord say, Heather, this story is actually for you. Yeah, I'm using it for you to teach your daughter. And I actually just actually wrote a book and it's called I Am Not a Banana.
I
And
love it.
and it's about that story of identity that it's like when people say things against you that aren't true. Like if you were to call me a white supremacist, it's like you're calling me a banana. It's so weird that you look weird calling me that because it's
Right.
so untrue. And so, there's been lots of identity things, and I think it's a common thing. It's you see it through the Bible. It's just even the disciples, please, can I sit on your side? Can I be more important? Can I, like give me a special seat here? And it's just there's something in us that say we want to earn it, God, and we want you to think we're important. And God's like, you don't have to earn it. You don't.
Yeah. Well, I mean, identity is so important now. I mean, with the woke ideology and identifying with the alienated
Yeah.
crowd, right? It's huge. So I mean, our entire
Yeah.
life is based on identity, right? Our
Yep.
identifying
No,
with
absolutely.
Christ. There's a book called I Am a Walrus or something like
Oh
that.
yeah, yeah. It's Mike Matt Walsh.
I have that book
Do
and
you?
I love that. Yeah, I'm gonna get your I Am a Banana book
Yeah.
because I told my husband too. I was like, oh, she's got this book about a banana. It's
Oh, so you
hilarious.
had seen it. I had posted it on social media, yeah.
I did well. I thought it was going to be similar. See, I told you
Oh.
I
Yeah,
didn't
you didn't have time to really actually watch it or
would
whatever.
have bought the book, but I thought it was more of a Matt Walsh book. But I see that it's similar, but
Yeah,
it's all the incoming.
yeah,
Because even though I'm not white, I
yeah,
mean, I have every characteristic of an alienated person, but
yeah,
but I'm called a white supremacist for different things.
yeah.
So which is really strange. I want to ask you about, I didn't even get into your family life in terms of your progeny, which you have a lot. But I'm curious, was there a difference in terms of the way you operated, how the government managed or the government dealt with your website prior to this administration? I mean, given the fact that Canada tried to shut down certain things, do you feel that you had different pressures?
Maybe a little bit. I think that because of being in the crowdfunding space, a lot of it is just very social. And so, what we would see often is the Department of Justice or whoever sending over subpoenas, and then what they would want in the past, what they would want was donor data. So they're like, hey, we're going after this person. They have a campaign on GiveSendGo. We don't just want information about them in our subpoena. We want actually all the donors' information. And we're like, we're
Oh,
not, that's like so overstepping your bound. Like,
oh,
you can't, I have freedom of association. I can give money to somebody and not be blamed for what they go and do. Like if I didn't know they were going to go do it. Like that's one of our that's in the Constitution. Like this is what we get. And you're telling us that you want to find out who gave to this January 6th campaign so that you can go and find them and
yeah.
tag them or anti, COVID related something that it's like, oh, this is somebody who's pushing back against COVID narratives. And so we're going to go find who gave to them so that we can label them terrorists as well. And we were like, we are not going to send over
Okay. And
donor information.
they didn't push
They
it.
would try a little bit, but we just said no. Like you, if there's somebody who donated that you want, then subpoena them as well. And it would have taken them so long to subpoena everybody, and it would have fallen apart because they can't do that. And so we saw that way more in the last administrative administration than we see now. But mostly it's, I would say, almost the same as far as culturally. There are two sides and both are very screaming loud and want their side to be louder, and both based on loose factual information that they don't even know, right? Like there's like might be a little piece, but then everything else, and both sides do it. I've seen it. I've seen it from my friends. They post something and I'm like, that sounds too good to be true. Let me look it up. Oh no, that's not right. That didn't happen, right? And I see it on the other side as well. And so we're seeing the same thing, and sites like GiveSendGo allowing people to put their money out there to support things. It helps the truth actually come out more. It doesn't suppress people. We allow people to have a voice to say, no, here's the side. Here's my side. Here's what actually happened in that riot or in this situation. And we're giving people a voice. And so it's helping no matter who's in the government, it's helping the people be able to find a voice to say, I'm going to tell my story.
Yeah. I want to talk about the book, the other book. You're prolific. You're on your another book, and it's but this one's about women. So Built to Shine. Maybe you already wrote this one, and the reason why I'm asking this is because there's been a lot now written about the lost generation of men. And
Mhm.
recently I had a conversation with a theologian, and I don't know how we started talking about women. I think women in the ministry. And so, and I said, but we maybe there needs to be a campaign for women because I think they're lost. There's a lot of women who are lost now. And you could see it, from religiously, politically, they're separating from men. I have four boys, and they're leaning in a very California, and very, very, very atheist, liberal, progressive state. They lean, more conservative and even, more Christian. It's God has their heart, they'll have their own journeys. But I'm curious about women and what you think the role of a woman is. How do you express that, given you're a bit of a successful, prolific mom and a successful, prolific CEO. You've sort of done it all. And and that doesn't happen for all women, right? It's either they can be really good at one thing or good at the other. And I've had a conversation with a girlfriend of mine. She's got two daughters. This was a while back, and I was really, as somebody who has been around so many successful women, I've seen how the challenges of being a successful woman can take away from you being able to be a successful mother and wife. And, she wanted to encourage her daughter to be a CEO. What do you're both. So how do you advise and raise young women today, given the culture where they want to be so independent, they want to be alone, they want to they want to have the freedom to make choices. I will tell you what one theologian said to me. The theologian said to me, which I thought was a great answer. He said, "Do they know Christ? That's the first question I want to know." And I thought, I guess that is good because he said if they're going to pursue marriage and they don't know Christ, they're just going to be a floozy, or
Yeah.
they're just, it's, you got to know that first and then go where God takes you. Maybe that's sort of what you're
Yeah,
still.
I think for what I would say to that is, you know, that we're never meant to compete against men. This wasn't like we're made differently. God created us separately. He gave us different ways of being. Now, now there can be mixes and matches. I'm not saying it's across, but there are roles and there's responsibilities and there's talents and gifts and and if you live your life like I have to fall into this because I'm competing against this man and he wants my job and I like everything, I'm going to look at the negative. I want to look at the positive of having men and women in different roles. Like change the mindset. We're in this like feminist movement where women are going, let's fight. And I'm going, I don't want to fight. I want to
Mhm.
work together because men have some incredible qualities that were from the beginning, the protector, the provider, those type of things. And women have incredible, the nurturer, the one to that has more emotion. And again, men have emotion. My husband's very emotional, right? Like I am very strong. So I'm not even saying it's like blankets. I don't want anybody to hear me wrong, but I think we need to celebrate that God made men and women differently. He just did. He made our bodies differently. Men will be stronger than women. Now, yes, you might have one bodybuilder that can beat up the
Sure.
weakling guy, right? But for the most part, if you have two people the same age going to the gym, same amount of time, the men's going to be stronger. It just is how our bodies are made. It's hormones, it's muscle mass, it's all of that. And I don't know
Right.
why we feel like we have to fight against it. To me, it's something to be celebrated, to say, like, I can work with my brother and we both bring different things to the table. I don't have to fight him for that seat. Now, like I talked about not very long ago, is there was a fight in me to want to be the recognized one, to want people to know that I was also important. But that was my own thing. And I think that's what goes on in a lot of women is where like we have to prove ourselves. And when you can stop saying I have to prove myself and you say, I just need to be who God made me. And if that's a stay-at-home mom and that is your job, that is the most important job you're going to ever do. It doesn't, you don't have to be a CEO. You don't have to be whatever you think might be, have a master's degree or doctorate degree. No, if you're a stay-at-home mom and that's what God's called you to do, that is the most important job because you're the only thing you can bring to heaven with you is your children. Like you have a small amount of time to shape the next generation. That is like bigger than anything that I could do at GiveSendGo, right? Is raise my children. Now, when God has you step into a ministry or he has you step into a business role, which women do, and they do successfully because we bring a lot to the table in how we think and our
Yeah.
emotions and all of that. And so I really think that we've skewed it to be like, we either have to be exactly the same, like on a level playing field. And it's like, well, that doesn't happen. That's like saying we need a short person and a tall person to be on a level playing field in basketball. They're just not going to. They're different. They're made differently. Someone who's 4'5" and someone who's 6'11". They're going to have different advantages and different and disadvantages. And God has something for everybody for our talents and skills. And so for me, I was a stay-at-home mom. I never went to college, so I don't have a college degree as I lead Give Send Go. I was a stay-at-home mom and I raised my six kids and had some really cool seasons in that. I'm still raising kids because I had a baby when I was 40, which was a surprise, 10 years after my youngest was, I had a 10-year-old and then found out I was pregnant. And so there are definitely seasons of it, but that is because I'm still doing it. I have an 11-year-old at home. My youngest is now 11. I'm It's the most important job that I can do. But God has also given me Give, Send, Go. And so I'm stewarding it and saying, God, use me the talent you've given me, the gifts you've given me, and I don't have to compete with someone who's analytical because I'm not
Mhm.
analytical. I'm more creative, right? And so
Mhm.
like that's like me saying I have to compete against someone who's like, loves spreadsheets. Like, no.
Right. Right. Well, I
Why do
mean,
I? Yeah.
you have a good team. It sounds like you have a lot of complementary skills.
But that should be women in general, is saying, how do I bring something? What do I bring to the table? And it doesn't have to look like everybody else's to compete. Because
Right.
again, you could be very analytical and love numbers, and I could be very creative and love the people aspect of it. And it doesn't make one of us greater or lesser than, it just makes us different.
How do you think? Okay, my boys are. So it sounds like you've got a whole sort of group of boys, and it's probably one of the last
I have
questions.
two boys and then four girls, just
Okay, so they're probably what, 20s, 18?
Yep. So my three oldest are girls and a boy. So I have a 20-year-old boy, 24-year-old girl, 26-year-old girl, and 35-year-old girl. And then I have a 15-year-old adopted son and an 11-year-old girl.
Got it. How does marriage? in terms of ushering them towards marriage, ushering them towards career and marriage, right? So because boys, they're going to be the providers for sure. And you want them to, but you don't want them to just say, hey, you got to get your career settled and then you should marry. It probably you can have your wife and then you can even build your career together. How do those conversations happen in your house for both the girls and the guys?
Yeah, what I've seen as my kids have gotten older and you face those years where they start becoming who they are and who they're going to hang out with, and they start coming up, you could have told them all, they could have gone to Sunday school every week and memorized Bible verses, and then all of a sudden they're having some thoughts that you're like, man, they are being skewed by what the world is telling them, what they're consuming, their friends and that sort of thing. And so it's all navigating this. I'm doing it right now. And the way this works for me is I'm like, the hardest part about it is going, I can't address those things until my kid, like I can talk about them, but the prayer is, God, get a hold of my kids' hearts because that's what will change them. And you kind of mentioned that before. And so I'll give you an example. My daughter, one of my daughters, she was in high school and public high school and started hanging out with people that weren't necessarily aligned with what we thought and believed, and all different, homosexuals and feminists and just and drug addicts and just all the things that they, and so she was, she grew up knowing Jesus and going to church. My husband was a worship pastor for many years, and so we were very involved, and watching her slowly kind of shift who she was, not like just jump off the cliff, but like allowing little bits. And I remember one day she was sitting in my living room and I was like, I don't remember what we were talking about, but I said something like, well, when you get old and have kids, you can blah, blah, blah. Like I was kind of making a flippant, like funny comment because she said something like, well, when you're old and have kids. And she burst into tears, so angry. And I'm like, what is happening? And she's like, and she was probably 18 at the time. And she's like, how dare you? I said, what is your problem? Why are you crying? And she's like, how dare you put your like idea on me that I have to get married and have kids. Like that's your own idea. And I was like, I said, well, actually, it was kind of a joke what I just said. And the bottom line is, I actually don't care if you get married and have kids. I want you to do whatever God wants you to do. And so that was just a whole, I just don't understand this outburst on it because being married and having kids, if that's what God has for you, isn't a bad thing. Now, if He has you going and doing something else, that's fine too. I don't care. I just want you following the Lord. So, but this is really crazy that you're this angry about it. So,
Yeah.
fast forward a few years, right? She goes, she travels a bit, and she comes home, COVID, and she finally is like, I want to go do something. I had been telling her she should do YWAM, which is Youth with a Mission. It's a missions program. And so she was like, didn't want to do it because I was suggesting it. And then finally was like sick of being in our small town and said, I'm going to go to YWAM just because to get out of this town. And it's a 3-month Bible school, 3-month missions trip. And so she went off to Montana to do that. God got a hold of her heart. She comes back, COVID happens. You can still see the wrestle because her friends are here and things
Yeah.
like that. And she starts to, though, as she dives in, she starts to realize that what she was thinking wasn't right. That God is real, that there is more to life. And she was like, I'm going back to Cambodia and I'm going to be a missionary in Cambodia. And God totally changed this girl's heart. And she's a missionary right now in Cambodia, in YWAM. She teaches English. She's in charge of the director of an English speaking school. She worked for GiveSendGo for a long time and while she lived there and then took over this full-time position there, and watching God change her. And guess what she wants? She can't wait to get married. She cannot wait to have kids. She is like, I don't know if I'm supposed to stay in Cambodia longer because I don't want to miss my window of having kids and being married. And guess what? That wasn't because I convinced her and that I said all the right words. It's
Yeah.
because God got a hold of her heart. And that is like what I would say to anybody is like my prayer. My son, my 20-year-old, when he was in middle school, started stealing stuff, going off, if somebody in the neighborhood would do something bad, he'd be right there with him, right? Like it was like, what in the world's going on here? And it was hard. It was like really, really hard. And we were like, it finally got to a point where we had nothing else we could take away from him. Like he had no phone, he had no, like everything was gone. And it was like, he's making bad choices. He's going to end up on the street, like homeless and addicted to something because he's just going down this path. And so we were like, we're gonna. He made a really bad choice with some friends in the neighborhood where the cops were involved. And I said, this could be a felony for you. Like you're
Mm,
16 years old and this could be a felony. This would be on your record for the
mm,
rest of your life. Like, and so we said, you know what, my husband and I prayed about it and we're like, okay, we want to look ourselves in the mirror and say we did everything that we could do. And then he has his own choices. So we sent him away to a school called Teen Challenge down in Virginia. Didn't work out great. He got kicked out. And then we found one more school that we were like, okay, it's called Wolf Creek Academy up in North Carolina. Very expensive. I was like, we're paying for college, for our high schooler. And we sent him up there. And, it's like a strict school. Like you have to earn your privileges. This is a Christian school too. And as he was being transported from his school in Virginia up to North Carolina, he said he sat in the back of the car and he was like, okay, God, is this what I want for the rest of my life? That I'm just like always like in trouble. And he gets to this new school and he's kind of quiet and he's trying to figure this out. And again, God, I have no other words except that God pursued my son. I'm going to get teary. God pursued my son.
yeah.
And my son fell in love with Jesus.
Mm,
And he came back as 100% different kid that loved Jesus, that is on fire for the Lord, that loves to worship, that takes his guitar out and just worships Jesus, that shares with his friends unapologetically on the basketball court about Jesus. Like, and this is my kid that I was like, he's going to be on the side of the road. And so when you ask me questions like that, because it is personal to me, I go, Jesus is the only answer to these things. And I remember being with my husband while all our kids were making these little choices, some bigger than others, and being like, I felt like the Lord said, Heather, in Psalms it says, because I because he bends his ear to me, I will cry out. And it's like, I'm already bending my ear. It's not that you cry out and then I bend my ear. Like, I'm bending my ear to you. And because I'm bending, cry out to me. I want to hear from you. And I felt super convicted that I wasn't praying for my kids
mm,
dedicatedly. Like, if something bad was happening, I'd be like, God, help us, keep them, whatever. But like, it wasn't something that I did. And I was like, if I really believe that God wants to hear from us, like,
mhm,
why are we not praying for our kids? Like, they don't live in our house anymore, right? They're getting those ages where they're out. So I
mhm.
can't
Right.
pray with them when I tuck them in or before dinner. And
Mm,
so me and my husband bought journals for each one. And we would write in them and take turns and just pray for them. And we did that for the year, just praying over them and writing, today I'm praying for your friends. Today I'm praying for your spouse. Today I'm praying that you fall in love with Jesus. And so when all of a sudden our kids start falling in love with Jesus, and I was shocked, like, oh my gosh, look at our kids. I was
yeah.
like, he listened. He listened.
Yeah.
So that was a super long-winded answer
No,
about
I love it.
what I think is the only way that our
Yeah.
kids will be able to see culture for what it is if they
Mhm.
fall in love with Jesus.
Yeah. I love that. I mean, because essentially you're letting go, you're allowing them to make, I mean, you're guiding them, right? You made a
Yep.
decision for your son, but you ultimately, you have to, we were studying Mary in the my Bible study, and it was tough for her to let go of Jesus, right? But it said in the Bible study she had to let him go to not live his life,
Mhm.
but give his life. And I think that's sort of what we have to do, is we have to let go of our kids to allow them to make trust that they're giving their life to Jesus in Jesus' timing, and just trust, you're shepherding them, but Jesus also has control over
And
them
he loves them as much as, if not, he loves them more than we do.
for sure.
And the thing is though, they still have a choice. And so
Yeah.
it's not like this just automatic thing. Your kids, our kids, my kids still have a choice. And the Bible's very clear, and we kind of touched on this at the beginning, is that it says that the fragrance of Christ smells like perfume to some and the smell of death to others. The
Mm,
same words. The words we speak either smell like perfume, beautiful perfume, or death. It's the same words, though. So it has nothing to do with speaking the truth. It's going to be perceived by this world. Either someone's going to be attracted to it or they're going to turn away, and we can't control their outcome. We can just control the words that come out. And that's the same with our kids. And so I'm like,
Right.
God, pursue my kids. Please pursue my kids.
Yes, and I think that is what parents need to do. I know that's what's on my heart. I have one child who is on my heart this year. I have four of them, but
Hmm.
for this year, I'm on him. So, but this was great, Heather. I mean, there's so much wisdom, not only as you as CEO running your company in such a principled way, and clearly in matters that are extremely political, so hard decisions to make,
Yeah,
very moral decisions to make, and it's wonderful to see that you stand your ground in terms of just being open to, you know, the people you've had on your site, right? And so the people who have campaigned on your site. Anyway, this was lovely. I'm excited to stay in touch with you and see
absolutely.
and go goes. Thank you so much for joining me for this conversation.
No, thank you so much for inviting me on and definitely stay in touch. And maybe I'll see you at one of your conferences sometime.
I will. I'm inviting you. So I've been speaking with Heather Wilson, CEO of GiveSendGo. You've been listening to CRT. I'm Bambi Francisco Roizen.